And today's subject is desecrating God's name, Chillul Hashem, which is obviously a very serious matter. It says, "Onfeh Chillul Hashem gam kem amrim gdolim." Oh my goodness, yes, somebody was driving me around today, and it is a very, very delicate, and which means since people are observing us every second, we have to go out of our way not to make a Chillul Hashem. Like I told the guy, why don't you put a garbage bag in a small bag, and don't throw out the pistachios out of your car. Now Baruch Hashem, he didn't have a yarmulke on, but it's really, we have to be meticulous in our actions. We have to be thoughtful in our actions. A lot of Chillul Hashem, ki harbe sarich adam liot chas al kevod kono v'chol ma asher yosim. A person has to give respect to Hashem, you know. Once you wear a yarmulke, or people, you know, listen, the more greater and closer you are to Hashem, the more through a fine comb, you have to be meticulous and careful with your actions, because you're closer to God, and God is perfect, right? And people are expecting more what from you? Perfection. You understand? And that's really what the Gemara says. He says, "Sarich sheyistakel veitponen me'od shelo yimseh shama yuchal chilul lechavod chas v'chalila." We have to be very careful through our actions. God forbid, we shouldn't cause God's honor to become what? Lower. Because where's God? God, when we got the Torah at the Har Sinai, you know, we're his ambassadors to the world, right? So if we are God's representatives on this world, our actions need to be noble, need to be humble, need to be perfect, not clueless and negligent. So there's some people I cannot, I want to run like 1,000 miles away the other way from them, because their whole operation, the way they act, the way they talk, the way they walk is all thoughtless. It's not exact. It's not being in a specific honorable and noble and humble and good way. It's just so random, and anything that comes out of their mouth, right? We can't do that, because it says echad shogeg ve'echad mezid bechilul Hashem. It doesn't matter if the Chillul Hashem that you made wasn't on purpose, right? Even the bottom of the day, through your negligence, Chillul Hashem came out. Either if you did it purposely or unpurposely, you know. And the Rambam, we pass again. The Rambam says you don't get forgiven till Chillul Hashem even on Yom Kippur. Only when you die, you get forgiven, right? Because now, what is the Chillul Hashem? The Gemara says in Yuma Peivav. Amar Rav kegon anad shem bisav lo yivnen al altar. Rav said, let's say I go by. Okay, let's say the custom in a certain city is that they do not sell anything on credit. Like here in LA, La Brea Kosher, everybody has it's very nice. The store owners trust a lot of people, and then they have a running open credit line up to like 2,000. Or New York also, I know it's like this. Or Israel. The guy has a special electronic code, and it's like, oh, your balance is 1,000, 500. Then they pay it off once a month because they have account number. But let's say you're living in a society that doesn't exist. Now, you're a rabbi, since you're a big shot and everybody respects you, you buy on credit and you don't pay right away. So what are people going to think? Oh, the rabbi's taking advantage, and either he's not paying for his item, or why is he getting special treatment, right? And unfortunately, many of us human beings, they don't even have 1 ounce of decency to give the guy 1% the benefit of the doubt. They're always looking to bash him, break him down. And worse, they think their brains have been modified in a way that they're always pure negativity. So the Rav says that could be a Chillul Hashem, because people think that I'm not paying for what I ordered at the butcher. Rabbi Yochanan says if I walk 4 feet without Torah and Tefillin, right? I have to be angelic. If I just waste my time, and people think that rabbis are wasting their time. And he says, the greater people that hold you in esteem, if you're like Rav Ovadia Yosef or Rav Chaim Kanievsky, then you have to be super careful. You You always constantly have to be vigilant not to do anything that's not appropriate according to your what? Level. According to your great knowledge and wisdom and piousness, you have to be careful in the way you conduct yourself in front of the eyes. Actually, the Khatam Sofer said, he said, you know what the hardest mitzvah in the Torah is? The prophet Shmuel, which is equal to Moshe and Aaron, you know, Shemuel HaNavi, that's this week's parsha actually. Why did Korach, Moshe's cousin, start out with him? You know why? Because he had a spark of divine prophecy, Ruach HaKodesh, and he saw that I'm going to have a great-great-grandson, Shmuel HaNavi, that is equal to both Moshe, not only Moshe and Aaron on one side of the scale, and Shemuel on the other hand. That's what gave him the chutzpah, the audacity to start it up with the master of all prophets, right? Moshe is the Adon HaNevi'im. So he says, you have to understand that the greater we are, the more careful we need to be in conducting ourselves. If he's just negligent, then that's what it is. So I was telling you about Shmuel HaNavi. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there. But Shmuel, Khatam Sofer said the hardest mitzvah in the Torah is Vayiter Nikim Hashem u'Misael. There's a concept that both God and the nation of Israel should never have any doubts whether you were ethical in your business dealings. Like Shmuel HaNavi, before he passed away, he said, "Halo katzir chitim hayom." It was in the middle of the dry season in Israel, like LA. You know, it doesn't rain here. All of a sudden, it started pouring down like a flood of water, a storm of water, because he said, "The heavens and earth should be my witness that I didn't even take any funds." Shmuel HaNavi didn't take a penny for all his services of being, you know. So the Khatam Sofer says it's very, between you and God, God knows your heart. It's easy to, he said in a way, it's easier to keep God happy than the population, the general population happy, because some of them have this poison of negativity and pessimism and, paranoia. They think everybody's a crook like they themselves are. I mean, there's a concept there also of kol posel bemumo posel. If like the Gemara says, whoever calls everybody in town a mamzer, you got to think maybe himself subconsciously has that. It's a scary thing. So he says, Ki kavod Torah hu shemarbe limud v'yarbe kamo yishor v'mudot. He says the honor of Torah is not only that you know all of Shas. Okay, that's great. God is not looking for encyclopedias, but that's the greatness of all our leaders, like Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Rav Ovadia Yosef. The greatness of their heart was equal to their mind. As much as they were intellectual giants, I was with Rav Chaim Kanievsky. He was basically a dead man. He was still seeing winning 200 people a day and blessing them. So how selfless could a person be? You know? So the greatness of our Gedolim is their humility, their ethics, their integrity is as great as their vast genius knowledge of Torah, right? And if it's the other way around, right? Like one time, the head of our yeshiva, the Baal Avodas Halevi, Rav Ruderman, Rav Yaakov Yitzchak Ruderman, once said he didn't like it. He said a rabbi has to be a spiritual father. The same way a father loves his son, that's how much you have to care about your students. So he got all the rebbes in yeshiva. He said yeshiva is not a Talmudic university. It's a whole different, you understand? That's the same thing. A rabbi is just not somebody that knows his humility, his nobility, his being in such a angelic and humble way has to be equal to his knowledge. If it's not that way, it causes Chillul Hashem, you know? And it causes bizayon lilmod atzmo. It causes, because people, again, Rav Volbi in the Ali Shor explains this, that Torat Hashem temima. God is perfect, His Torah is perfect. Now, us people are not perfect, but the expectation, people have, even the most sinister and unreligious Jew knows deep down in his deepest echelons of his soul different deepest layers of his soul, that the Torah and God are perfect. So there's an expectation that if you are connected to that, you should equally be what? All your actions should be as perfect as humanly possible. So if God forbid you know a lot of Torah, but you're dishonest in business, you curse out people, you don't have patience, it causes people to run away. That's a Chillul Hashem, right? Because a Torah scholar, see, people don't realize this, how important rabbis, rabbis is the wrong thing. Torah scholars, people that spread Torah in the masses, they're a living personification of the Torah. Because believe it or not, you learn much more. There's a concept called Gadol Shimusho Yoter Milimudo. It's actually, we learned it in a few weeks ago, Parsha, that Yoshua, there were people that had a higher IQ than Joshua. But why did Joshua lead the Jews into Eretz Yisrael? Because he was at Moshe's foot every second. He was by his master's side every second. And you absorb, and it's more beneficial, learning Torah, serving a Torah scholar, being in their presence, even more than learning from them. Because when I teach you something, it's abstract. It's not practical, But when you actually, when you're in the presence of the Torah scholar, you see how he teaches his kids. You see how he talks to his wife, right? Actions speak greater than words. So since actions speak greater than words, the Torah scholar has to be what?
Active.
Very careful that his actions, you understand, should represent this idea of Kiddush Hashem, not the opposite. Because they say, okay, his words are very good. He knows a lot of Torah, but what is his actions? His actions need to be full of patience and humility and nobility and angelic and in high esteem. Not like this garbage society. I go trying to rent different houses. I'm in the real estate business also. I mean, now I'm not active as much. I have other people do it. But, the guy's a doctor. The guy, you look at his credit score, he's 850. He's like a Yale or UCLA grad. And then every second he's saying the F-bomb. I mean, the guy has no self-respect. I mean, society has gone down the drain where people just act like animals. They talk like animals. Instead of acting in a noble and humble and angelic way and with a certain self-respect, right? So this is what we're saying. We're saying that the Torah scholars should represent the polar opposite of what we see in this low-life society where people talk dirty, think dirty, act dirty, And it says, keeping Shabbat, the Gemara says it's like a mountain of halachot. Actually, Rabbi David Yosef says a beautiful thing. He says that the laws of Shabbat are so sophisticated, especially technology now is, like, for example, what would you say? You're allowed, if you own a e-commerce, so you're allowed to website, Amazon account be open on Shabbat? So, I've been trying to give that class for a long time. But it's just saying the laws of Shabbat, and it happens every week. I was telling like the yeshiva guys. It's sad, like in Israel, people learn Gemara the whole day, but they don't learn Halacha. That's the wrong thing. That was the first class I gave them. Every day I give them a short Musar. But it says, Afilu divrei shavut, and there's a lot of rabbinical laws on Shabbat. It says, don't think, I want to let you know, the Ramchal is saying something very fundamental here. He says, don't think since it's only rabbinical laws like mukseh, they're garbage. I want to tell you something. There was a time in the nation of Israel, there was millions of Karaites that totally, unequivocally, 1,000% rejected the oral Torah and the rabbis. You know how many of them exist today? Almost zero. The only Torah that exists, you should know, the Rambam says a very important thing about the rabbinical laws. Because the Persians have a lot of problems. It's Kujoi Torah neveshte. You have to understand, the Rambam says, you should know, the rabbis did not and would not, with a clear conscience, add any rabbinical ordinance to the Torah if they didn't know the whole Torah would go down the drain. You see what the Rambam is saying? The Rambam saw it fit that we have to add like mukseh. If we wouldn't do this, the whole enchilada, the whole baby and its water would go down the drain and be. So don't take the rabbinical ordinances and decrees and halachot lightly, because again, the proof is in the pudding. Anybody that has rejected them has assimilated and is no longer part of this holy and noble nation of God's ambassadors. Like the first machloket between Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel was whether if you bring a korban on Shabbat, are you allowed to touch the korban and lean on it? And it's a whole thing. If you look at the Gemara there, it's like it was a big, big deal. Because it's sad. In my 20-year rabbinical career also, it's so sad. It makes me cry. Because people I really loved and care for, I saw that they thought that the rabbinical was some type of joke, and now they're all off the derech. You know? You should know. These people were like prophets, the Chachamim, that instituted these laws. And they knew their vision was prophetic. And they saw that if they don't put this security system around the Torah, the whole thing is going to get stolen and looted. And the whole Torah is going to be, chas v'shalom, go down the drain. He says, okay, you have to go look at the poskim. Some people are more machmer, like they followed Ben Ishcha, you understand? Some people follow Rav Ovadia, but he says you have to learn the contemporary laws also. Like I was saying, like Rabbi David Yosef, Rav Ovadia says, like Shabbat is like we're living in such a technically advanced world with LED lights and this and that and that. And it's not only important to learn the classical Shabbat laws, but also see how they manifested in today's modern and ever-changing, more, super thing world. Why is it hard for people to keep Shabbat perfectly? He says the hardest part, the Arizal says this also, by the way. Ramchal is a big Kabbalist, people don't understand. He says, since we're in such a physical world, even if you keep all the laws perfectly, a lot of times people talk divrei chol. In Shabbat, whatever you're not allowed to do, right? Are you allowed to do business? No. You're not allowed to talk about it either. You know, like the joke. Two people came to shul. This guy tried to sell a car, and by the end he said they were negotiating. He said, I already sold it. Too late. I sold it to somebody else. Shul is not I try to tell this to people. Shul is not like a social gathering hall. In that, while we're praying, maybe after for Kiddush, Knesset means everybody should get her and have a good social structure. That's true. But praying is not like you're in a casino or coffee cafe and schmooze, And that's why anything that is forbidden to do on Shabbat, it's forbidden to what? Also talk about. And I tell you, it makes a world of a difference. If you sit at a Shabbat table where it's all divrei Torah, that's what one of my rabbis, Rabbi Franz, said. He says, La'asot et ha-Shabbat. There's certain things in life, yes, the day has its unlimited holiness, but you yourself also have to, which means a marriage is as great as you make it. The more, oseh shalom bimrumav, you understand? Shalom is not just not fighting. Shalom is not, let's say a husband and wife don't fight, but they never talk to each other. Are they at peace? Let's say a Shabbat table is, nobody's lighting fire, nobody's touching muktzah, but it's all talking about politics and the Lakers and the Yankees and things. Is that holy? So, la'asot Shabbat, just like a husband and wife, they have to work at their marriage to build it up. As much as you put caring and time and communication and sacrifice into it, it flourishes and becomes such an unlimited, holy union. Same thing in the Shabbat. Shabbat is not just passively, okay, physically, I'm not going to touch muktzah, I'm going to keep all that, but in my mind and head, everything I'm talking about is like a regular day. You've missed the boat. That's what he's saying, the Ramchal. That's why already Yeshaya says, you want to respect Shabbat, talk holy words, right? You should know, it's brought down in some poskim, you'd appreciate this, that on Shabbat you're only allowed to talk Hebrew, Lashon HaKodesh. It's a Yom Kodesh, and you only talk Kadosh. Like we said before, whatever is forbidden to do on Shabbat, you shouldn't think about it or talk about that subject matter, right? So Shabbat is not the time to go talk about your stock portfolio. It's the day to talk about Divrei Torah. That's why it's forbidden to go visit your properties, to see what, like gardening or maintenance it needs for tomorrow. Because the Chavetz Chaim says it the best way. He says Shabbat is like heaven on earth. Working is like hell. Why do you want to go, right? The Gemara says to make an honest dollar is like Kriyat Yam Suf. Kasher Pinasoda. Like, do you know how many different charlatan and thing to make an honest dollar? So therefore, like for example, like in Israel, it's not the right thing to go walk by the bus stop. So the second Shabbat is over, you take the bus. On Shabbat, you need to be in a meditative state of connecting to your Holy Father in heaven and learning as much. Like the Ben Ish Chai says, when you learn on Shabbat, it's 1,000 times more powerful in the spiritual world. Not that already Shabbat is like, mentally you need to be a different place. Verbally you need to be in a different place. Right? Absorbing holiness, not... And it says, it's forbidden on Shabbat to say, I want to do this business deal tomorrow. All these things. The Ramchal is saying Nekiyut is to be free from any type of sin. So he says, I can't go through all the 613 commandments in the Mesilat Yesharim, because Mesilat Yesharim is not really a halachic work, it's more of an ethical work. But he says you got to use the same idea on everything. He says every mitzvah, for example, the mitzvah of staka, or the mitzvah of mezuzah, any mitzvah, there's the more difficult parts of it, there's the more nuanced part of it, right? He says the goal is that we should be totally free and clear from any type of sinfulness in it, The Torah is not a salad bar. Right? When we said Na'aseh v'nishma, right at the mountain of Sinai, when we said Na'aseh v'nishma, did we say Na'aseh v'nishma only on 600 mitzvot, not 613 or 611? We said what? We're going to carry out the mandate of the complete Torah. So he says, if you want to, and actually to the contrary, if a certain mitzvah, like let's say honoring your parents, is more difficult, like let me just give you an example of being naki. Like Chacham ben Sion Abba Shaul brings from the Sefer Charedim, like to be, okay, you should respect your parents. But if you want to go on a higher level, every mitzvah of the Torah, according to Kabbalah, you have to do b'machshava dibur maaseh. You have to do the mitzvah in action, talking, and thinking. So he's brought down, Chacham ben Sion, he brings in a sefer, I saw, you should think that your parents are great, like the mayor, like a great Rosh Yeshiva. They're honorable people, Or when you talk to them, don't talk to them like they're your servant. It's disgusting. I cannot believe it. It makes me shake to the core. My soul gets shaken to the core when I see sometimes people in our community, the way they communicate to their parents. It's so disgusting and dishonorable and distasteful that these people brought you into the world and they did 1,000,001 favors for you, and now you do that. It's absolutely ridiculous. You know what I mean? Mm. So he says, if you want to be naki, the goal is to be totally free from any type of laxation and in any of the mitzvot. It's like the Jews are like a snow white sheep, right? So just like the sheep is totally white, right? If you look at a sheep, like those white sheeps, that has a lot of blotches on it, doesn't look good. Same thing. Our report card with Hashem regarding the 613 commandments should all be A+. we're not angels, but as much as physically possible, as much as our conscience and neshama allows us, it says, Rav Huna b'shem Rav Chisda shelo hikdim echad mem tefillin shel rosh tefillin yarsha hikdim v'ya Moshe meshabcham v'lo yotzim misham l'shalom. So it says, what does it mean? It says the Jews were so careful in their fight against Midian. See, a Jewish soldier, God fights for them supernaturally, on the condition that the Jewish soldiers are very careful in the way so they don't talk during tefillah. There's a Gemara in Sotah. It says like somebody that would talk in the middle of tefillah, David would see in Ruach HaKodesh that he did that sin. He said, get out of my army. You're not holy enough. Same thing here. It says, the Ramchal is saying, do you know as halacha, you're not allowed to touch. First you have to put your hand tefillin, then your head tefillin. So if you touch your head tefillin, so he says like, that's how careful the Jewish soldiers were in the time of Moshe, that they wouldn't go and try to put their head tefillin before their hand tefillin, or even touch their. That's why, like when you put it in your tefillin box, you should put it that always you should put like your hand tefillin on one side and like on the right side, put your hand tefillin so you don't take out your head tefillin, right? So it's like that's how careful they were in their carrying out of the mitzvot. Because if not, they wouldn't have had a peaceful fight. Like I said, the Gemara says, the Talmud Yerushalmi says this, that somebody that would talk between Yishtabach and Baruch start schmoozing in the middle of tefillah, they would say, you're disqualified from our army. We don't need you. God is not going to do supernatural miracles for people that talk in the middle of tefillah. So you see how tefillah is not from the Torah, right? The rabbis wrote it, but you see how careful and meticulous one needs to be in order to get to the level of the cute.